We are going to talk once again with our friend, Reverend David William Parry, who has multiple PhDs.
So it struck me as odd again. The American military, I do think they're sinister. I think they're very sinister people. I mean, who is it they're serving? Because it doesn't strike me they're serving the Constitution or Americans, and I think that's very, very sinister. And when we're doing that, it strikes me that ufology and UFOs and alien encounters are very much a part of that picture. And that's exactly what the military doesn't want, because the military has the interests of the ruling elite at its heart.
I want to say that disclosure in ET is a first world concern. But if you look at the rest of the world, the third world, sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, all of them, can you get someone from one of those countries that are concerned about if their child is going to live to tomorrow morning? Is anyone from any of these countries able to come on and talk about ET?
I think UFO people, ufologists, the UFO community has to be a bit more ballsy. It has to be a bit more robust. Grow up time.
Is it real? Is it not? Oh my God! Look what they said. Bombshell this, bombshell that, whatever. Let's talk let's talk about what this really means and why should we even care?
Biological entities. Would it make a massive difference to the vast majority of the human race that a physical grey was proved to be true? The answer must be surely, on a logical level, that a consciousness, that an energy that had absolutely nothing to do with our continuum at least touches a group of people. And the repercussions of that go on forever.
The following program is presented for general information, education and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be advice of any kind. The content, views, thoughts and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals involved. The use of information on this program is at the user's own discretion.
Stuart, Rev Stu, what's going on?
Hey, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas down here in Australia, Mike.
Well, yeah, here in the States too. We're almost there.
All right. New things under the Christmas tree. God knows what we'll get this year.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on where you look, right? I mean, in some social media outlets, you might think we're going to get presidential level disclosure for Christmas, but I don't. I'd be shocked if that should happen.
There's a lot of talk about that in the media, Mike, and more than I've ever seen. It's very interesting. It's almost like they're trying to push for that. And when I say they, whoever is for disclosure, really putting a bit of pressure on the president there, which is actually, it's very interesting because even if it doesn't result in him making the announcement, it's still getting people talking about the issue.
Exactly. That was my thought exactly too. And when we did our a review of Age of Disclosure with Stephen Bassett, and somebody commented on there, I'm not going to respond to them, but they CIA propaganda, and you know what? Honestly, I don't care if that's what it is. I really don't care because of what you just said. It gets everybody talking about it. Okay, and that's all that matters. So I don't think that it is, but I'm open to that being a possibility, but I do not give a crap. Doesn't matter. All that matters is what people are talking about it.
Well, I'll tell you, I've mentioned this a couple of times about the soft disclosure, partial disclosure. As long as some disclosure is occurring, I'm happy. I'm on board with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've said it how many times, like disclosure has happened over and over and over and over and over again, but it just hasn't happened from a presidential level. But I would say that we are closer now than ever in human history. That's a fair statement to make, but I also don't see it happening before the end of this year, 2025.
Now, Mike, I've got to tell you, I feel that it's very gratifying that people are talking about psionics and the spiritual aspect of disclosure. So I really feel like you and I are on the right path with this kind of discussion that we're having here on the show.
Yeah, that is something I noticed too, especially with, it's interesting. It almost seems as if when Age of Disclosure came out, they did touch upon a little bit there, and then after it came out, some of the people who were featured in it are now starting to talk more about the spiritual, dare I say religious. There's a difference, big difference between religion and spirituality, as we've already discussed many times here. But they're starting to talk about that aspect and the psionic aspect, the non-physical, philosophical aspects. Even the markets are coming into play too, which I've always found that fascinating. And anyways, yeah.
No, I like that, Mike, because this topic is very broad, lots of aspects to it. Now, can I ask you, who do we have on the show today?
So today we are going to talk once again with our friend, Reverend David William Parry, who has multiple PhDs. And, I thought, what a great guy to talk to now that the topic that we have sort of been covering for about 2 years is really starting to break its way slowly into the mainstream.
And I also like that the questions are being asked about what impact will this have on people's spiritual beliefs and their religion. So I'd really like to delve into that subject with him today.
Yeah, I want to get his opinion on that. And then there's someone who presented a question to us that is pretty interesting too, that I want to play that, and then we can maybe talk about that as well.
I know what you're talking about. I thought that was an excellent submission of a question. Really up to hear what he's got to say about that one.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good conversation starter. So if you're ready, I think we should probably just bring him on in, right?
All right. Do you mind doing the honors this time, please, Mike?
Sure. So actually, you know what? It's been a while since we've done this, and I may have forgotten a couple times. Welcome, one and all, wherever and whenever you may be. This is Universal Disclosure, meeting the moment. My name is Mike, an active UFO Field Investigator in Southern California, with my friend and co-host,
Reverend Stu in Melbourne, Australia.
And today we are going to talk with Reverend and Monsignor David William Parry from...
He's from Scotland.
That's what I thought. I was going to say the UK, but it's like, our Scottish friend. Anyways, Universal Disclosure Podcast proudly welcomes back Reverend David William Parry. So, Reverend David, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again for another, I'm sure, great conversation. I want to just toss out a couple things here. Well, actually, before I do that, you did get to talk. You did get to see the Age of Disclosure documentary, right?
Yep. Stuart kindly sent it to me, and as I said off here, I always watch what Stuart sends me.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. What's your general reaction or thoughts to that one?
I don't know. It just, with the deepest respect to the UFO community, if there is such a thing, because you remember I'm always iffy about terms like that. I mean, what does that mean? There are people who are interested in a fascinating subject. Does that mean you're part of a community? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I mean, it smacks to me of desperation. Disclosure now! Disclosure now! Oh no, it's delayed again! Disclosure now! I mean, these things are real or they're not. Sod the disclosure. These things are real or they're not. They're real. They're real. There we are. Get on with it. Deal with it. I don't care what Donald Trump thinks. I don't care what Donald Trump has been told to think by the military-industrial complex. I don't care what they've hidden from him and what they haven't, because I bet that's gone on. Previous presidents have said they were misled, they were confused, and they were given false information. So why would the situation with him be different? It struck me as one of those legendary Trump moments. Now, remember, I'm a mere Brit, a mere European, so I'm not for or against Trump. It meant a foreign politician, the end, right? So it means nothing to me. It means nothing to me. But it struck me because there are certain patterns in his behaviour which have amused mere Europeans. There's a sort of Trump moment. He's completely against it and nothing happens. But then he's an expert on the subject. He always knew it, and he knows more than everybody else on this subject anyway. There's a Trump moment of sudden revelation, of epiphany. I don't know, are we on the verge of a disclosure? I think the UFO community has to work out why it thinks that's so important and what that disclosure would actually entail. So, right, I've got a bit of machinery in front of me which fell off a UFO. Right, yeah, and, so on one level, it means next to nothing. And someone will come out the woodwork immediately and say, no, it's not. So, I don't know what the UFO community expects from this legendary mythic moment called disclosure. We either accept that there are, I mean, and also there was something weird I noticed, that they're trying to draw a distinction between um, what do they call it? The aerial phenomena thing again and UFOs. But the whole point was the UAP thing was involved, that was created to embrace ufology. That was created to make sure no one was talking about UFOs anymore. And actually, for once, they didn't want to exclude it, they included it. But whatever those things are, they are happening. So it struck me as odd again. The American military, I do think they're sinister. I think they're very sinister people. I mean, who is it they're serving? Because it doesn't strike me they're serving the Constitution or Americans, and I think that's very, very sinister. So who is it? I mean, but the American military don't deny there are UAPs. I mean, they've gone out of their way to say there are UAPs. So in what way are they denying UFOs? I found the whole thing weird and confusing and circuitous and going in circles yet again. That strikes me as Dodd at work. The Dodd people love this conversation going in circles.
Got to jump in here. It's not DOD anymore. It's DOW now, Department of War.
Really?
Oh,
it's yeah. I don't know if you got that memo, but that's the official name of it now.
Yeah, I don't keep up with my memos. I'm sorry. They don't want working class people questioning all these things. So we need a war to kill them all off. Yeah, what a surprise. I mean, they're gearing up over here for war too. Why? Oh, the why is the interesting bit as opposed to anything else. And we've got to be suspicious, and we've got to ask, is the ruling class really looking after anything apart from its own interests? And if, sadly, that cynical attitude proves to be true, I'd love to be proved wrong, but it does seem to be true. What are its interests, and does that include us? It probably doesn't. And what would it do to maintain those interests? Certainly some sort of disclosure of other intelligences would not be high on its agenda. I mean, there was a question you were going on to ask me later on, but I need to raise the issue now, I think. Do I ever raise UFOs in my sermons? I mean, not all week, every week. No, people are there to worship. They're not there to, so what does worship mean? And yada, yada, yada. But they're there to worship, whatever we mean by that. They're not there to discuss the burning issue of the day. But I bring that up sometimes, as some of the big evangelicals do, like Chuck Missler, who, despite my overreactions to Big Aber, struck me as an honourable, intelligent man with a great deal of importance to say. It doesn't mean I agree with everything he said, but I think he's a man worthy of respect and stature. He deserves the stature. He used to bring it up because what it shows is not only our life as three-dimensional beings when we're interacting with a bigger reality, but the fact that things are going on that aren't part of our historical stream. And that strikes me. So yes, I bring that up myself. The world's a bigger place than you think it is. There's a lot more going on than you realize. Don't be beaten down by the drudgery. All this other stuff is going on. And is it directly part of your life? Probably not, but it still is part of your life. And, I think the powers that be probably don't want that for ordinary, what's that Americanism? Schmoes, ordinary schmoes like us. Because they want us getting on with our little jobbies and earning them huge amounts of money and not asking cheeky questions. Silicon Valley's sinister. I can't remember the CEO I was looking at the other day who wanted more robust judiciaries around the world, by which he seems to mean multiple public hangings. Thank you for that contribution to the human condition. Shut your face and go and earn some more money. We've got to start radically asking who we are as people and what we want out of life. Those are religious questions. And when we're doing that, it strikes me that ufology and UFOs and alien encounters are very much a part of that picture. And that's exactly what the military doesn't want, because the military has the interests of the ruling elite at its heart. And then much broader questions suddenly surface and are placed very squarely on the table. Does that answer at all, Mike?
Yeah, wow. I wasn't sure what to expect. Wow. Okay. Definitely appreciate it. It's always good to get sort of different opinions as well. Because I've talked to a couple people who are what I would call normies, right? Who don't really get into this topic too much, and they loved it. They thought it was great. They were very impressed by it, and I thought it was well put together. But I agree with everything that you're saying as well. I feel like both sides are making good points. So we like to keep fair and balanced here and talk about all things. Before we get into Christmas, I want to ask you some Christmas questions. And before we get into those Christmas UFOs, I wanted to sort of, from what we're talking about now, this is like a perfect sort of transition where someone sent in a question to us that I'm going to play the audio in a second. And then we can maybe chat about that, because they're asking a pretty interesting question.
I want to say that disclosure in ET is a first world concern. But if you look at the rest of the world, the third world, sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, all of them, can you get someone from one of those countries that are concerned about if their child is going to live to tomorrow morning, if their rice paddy is going to have rice and be able to feed the village? Is anyone from any of these countries able to come on and talk about ET? My question is, this, I think, is a first world concern. And I do not think that people in poverty or people in the other parts of the world are actually concerned about this. We can debate ET because we have a society that is at a point that can do so. It's almost a luxury to be able to do that. Like I said, Mauritania, or if you're going to go to Central African Republic, this isn't even on their scope. They're still of this world. But I'm just telling you, there's really something to think about.
Okay, so Reverend David and also Reverend Stu, what do you guys think about this? Like, I'm not afraid to say I'd never heard of Mauritania before, so I had to look that up where it even was. But he makes a good point about the third world and the people in poverty, like not giving a crap about any of this conversation. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, Mike, I'll go first if you don't mind. When I heard this, I remembered that Reverend David already referenced this about people who are struggling with just regular pragmatic issues aren't going to be so interested in disclosure. So I thought of you straight away, Reverend Dave, when I heard that comment from one of our viewers.
I'm obliged as always, my friend. And Stuart, yeah, I mean, you know me. I mean, you're getting to know me reasonably well these days, I think. The existential, by definition, must take precedence. I am worried about my family eating this evening. Oh my God, disclosure's just about to. I won't go and get food now. I mean, it's realistic. What struck me about that comment was, I mean, I don't like phrases like first world and third world. I think they're antique. They're too neo-colonialist for me, and I'm hating to sound too woke. Hey, I'm woke, live with it, yeah. Because I don't know, it sort of it's us and them. I don't like any image where it's us and them. I mean, because it leads to warfare. It's us against the Russians. It's us against the Chinese.
Oh, yeah.
Or is it more complex than that? Also, the first thing I thought of when I heard that was Close Encounters of the third kind, forgive me, where they're in India, and Lacon, is that his name in the movie? They go to the Indian guru, and he shouts at the mass of people, "Where did you hear the noises?" And they all point upwards, "Yee!"
That's right.
Also the whole Vimana thing, I mean, that comes from India. It doesn't come from London or New York. It's in the holy scriptures of India, and I mean, I'm to blame for that. I went around for years saying, they don't talk about technology and sacred scriptures. That's ridiculous. So, of course, as usual, I'm proved utterly and totally wrong. and it is in the sutras what a Vimana is and how you bloody build one. I mean, so you can't be proved much more wrong than that. Is that so technological texts are not only known in, sorry, I won't use third world, in other cultures. They've been discussed very seriously. Also, right, before I get back to that, I think those existential issues affect us in the West now as much as they do any other part of the world. I know people who have to work 4 or 5 jobs to be able to meet their rent and feed themselves. I mean, this is disgusting in the 21st century. It is immoral. It drains them of life. But it happens here. You're not telling me that isn't the reality of people working in Domino's Pizzas in America. You're not telling me that's not the reality of Starbucks in Clapham in London. That's the reality. It's the reality of working people who strangely find themselves at war with a finance-based form of capitalism. I won't go down that route too far, don't worry. I mean, even Karl Marx, and I'm not getting into that, and I'm a libertarian, I'm not a Marxist. And there's another thing, what does that mean in America, and what does it mean in Europe, and yada, yada, yada. But, Marx cannot be considered correct because all he ever talked about was what would happen with industrial capitalism. But that's been well and truly left behind us. What we're dealing with now is financial capitalism, and also technological capitalism. I mean, that's entirely not entirely, but hugely different from what he had in mind. So, therefore, his analyses. I mean, people get their knickers in a twist over nothing, right? He was an economist with a conscience, but it's nice to think some economists might have a conscience, and it offended him when he was walking to the British Museum when he finally moved to Britain to write his work, because he used the museum's resources as a result. He'd have to, in the richest country in the world as it was in those days, he had to walk over children starving to death in the street. I mean, that offended him. I find that rather good. Does anything like that offend Jeff Bezos? I bet it doesn't. So we getting a grip of who we are and what we are. So is it part of the cultural nexus of the West? Disclosure, UFOs, yes. Everyone will be aware of that subject. They will be aware of UFOs. I mean, it's a joke in local pubs, and sometimes a serious topic. Sometimes a serious topic. He put his teeth back in local pubs. Because it's a part of the discourse of the West, but it's also a discourse of the East. I think that's something of a bewildering, odd statement. I mean, how could it not be? Are we saying UFOs have never been there? If they have been there, they will be part of the discourse. Will they be a major part of the discourse? Probably not. But is that the case in the West? I mean, it depends what you think UFOs are. It depends whether you think it's a new phenomena. I don't think that. I think it's a very ancient phenomena. I mean, certainly if you're thinking of books in the past, there was a guy called, oh my God, he wrote Gods, Beasts and Men, Klosowski, something like that, who may have been a member of the Theosophical Society, late 1800s. He goes traveling in Tibet and those parts of the world, which was not an easy task in those days. I mean, it's a nightmare now, but it wasn't easy in those days. And he's with some of the lamas, and they see a UFO. And he can't take his eyes off it. This radiant thing in the sky and the lamas are just nodding to themselves like it's an everyday thing. And he says, I'm paraphrasing rapid, look, can you all see that? And they nod, they can all see it. So what do you think of it? What do you think of it? And they say, well, it's the radiant form of Shambhala in material. They happen all the time. So for the lamas, it's yet another aspect of the weird and wonderful world we live in, and maybe more than that. I'm thinking of Madame David Alexandra Neal, who also
great
who
book.
saw such things. I mean, other parts of the world are much closer to the psychic processes than us, the psyche, than we are in many ways. And I think their mythologies, Yeah, and thereby hangs a tale. What does that word mean? Their folklore, their systems of folklore, their cultural treasures include these materials. So so would the Emperor of Japan be worried about the existential and needing to feed his family? No, he wouldn't, and he might find that subject interesting. Would the Brahminical elite of India, who are so filthy rich compared to people literally starving to death in the streets, I'm absolutely certain they'd entertain out their wonderful dinner parties the subject of disclosure on UFOs. It's what people in the West are discussing. We'll discuss it. So I thought it was I can understand where that comment's coming from, but I mean, it doesn't really bear too close an examination, particularly because you do find UFOs referenced in occult writings, you find them referenced in people's diaries, you find them referenced as phenomena in the arts in other parts of the world. I mean, the attitude is different. In the West, it tends to be this sort of all guns blazing. Oh my God, what was that? We're just about to be invaded by squids. Whereas, in the East, they have this more measured. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what that meant, which strikes me as more balanced for a start. And it's part of the fabric. I mean, I find it odd that the West has divided itself into so many layers that now so many clergymen won't discuss it. Well, if you think it's a manifestation of evil, isn't it your job to discuss it?
Love it.
I mean, and compared to sort of, oh, that's just nonsense. Hey, every word of that is true. It's where people don't want to think and they want their own gang, and our gang doesn't talk to your gang. I mean, it shows sadly the decline of the West and our discourse, and the fact it's not keeping up with other discourses, which is why there's so much international fragmentation at the minute. That's really what's going on. So the answer is yes and no. I partly agree with it, and I certainly understand where that view is coming from. But as I say, for me, it doesn't really bear too much examination because you do find it mentioned over there. It's just the attitude is remarkably different to those things.
Wow. Fascinating. Thank you. So that touches on sort of resistance to so-called disclosure and other cultures being absolutely happy with it, already feeling like there has been a disclosure. Because I was going to ask you about how would this affect certain spiritual or religious viewpoints. So you just touched on the fact that it's already integrated into some Eastern viewpoints. But in the West, and you also touched on this, some ministers, I don't want to go into too specifics, are viewing it as it's all demonic. It's all demonic and shouldn't be explored. We should just ignore the whole thing. We don't want to hear about disclosure at all. And that was mentioned in Age of Disclosure about certain resistance on that level too. I find that interesting. Got some thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's funny. I mean, do certain groups of American Christians want to talk about anything apart from money? Um, you know, which the answer seems to be no. And I watched the Tammy Faye movie. I can't remember what it was called, and got dewy-eyed at the end. The whole Jim Baker thing. I mean, he's not quite the monster that people painted him to be, because I've got friends who know friends of friends that know him, and yada yada yada. And she came across as the great. I don't hate evangelicals. I know some people think I do. I don't. I mean, Christians should not hate. I profoundly disagree with them on certain things, and certain obvious things, but that doesn't mean I hate them. I just think they're wrong. It's an opinion, and I think they're wrong. Certainly, I got dewy-eyed at the end of that movie because she came out of it so well. A young girl from the middle of nowhere, Hicksville, making something of her life, and meeting a guy on his way to the top, and I just thought that was remarkable. It strikes me that part of the job of anyone in ministry is to discuss evil. It's not only its locus, but its modus. What is it? Where's it coming from? What's our reaction to it? What should a Christian do? I mean, not to say it on one breath that it's evil, in the next breath we're not discussing it, strikes me as sort of I don't know, you're not really living up to your duties as a minister. You are bound to talk about those things, because does it, that word everyone hates nowadays, sin. I like the word sin. what it is a recognition that we're born into a situation. Look at it on two levels. We're born into a world which has been corrupted. Now, we can all argue till we're blue in the face about how that started and where it started, but you really would have to be an optimist to say that's not true. In what way wouldn't that be true? And secondly, the psychological mystery. Why don't people always choose what's good? Because it's good for them and it's good for the community. So why wouldn't they always choose that? The point is they don't. You know, and Edgar Allan Poe raises that in a philosophical essay, as far as I remember, called The Imp of the Perverse, by which he means, why would people choose the bad? Because it makes no sense. But there are some that do. So all these strike me as religious questions. I mean, the hidden dagger, I think, that ufologists largely, I mean, I don't think this, what's ufologists? You know, there's a guy interested in interesting things, you know, have in that question is, are ministers discussing it behind closed doors because they're frightened that all of it's really alien based, and a knowledge of aliens will destroy religion, then Western civilization will collapse and we'll all be murdering each other in the streets and raping ourselves. And, you know, but this gobbledygook, it's rubbish again. You know, do ministers discuss these things behind closed doors? I expect they do. I think I've come across two conversations I can recall to do with that. Somebody who thought it was interesting but didn't think it fitted into the cycle of sermons they were doing. Somebody else who thought the whole thing was to do with occultism and different dimensions of being. I thought that was interesting, but didn't end up doing it because the church committee thought, why are we addressing time on that when we should be talking about fundraising for the church? You know, I mean, you've got to, again, we need a grasp of reality in all these things about how human beings work and how churches work. Even if the dagger is right and it's all some sort of UFO thing, it doesn't mean churches will collapse. It doesn't mean there'll be open chaos in the streets. It just means we need to think again about what we've been told and what does that resource mean. I mean, I personally don't believe that for very strong reasons. I do think there is the mention of aliens in the Bible. I think very clearly, and maybe not in the places people think it is. But that, you know, ufologists think somehow that cancels religion. I mean, that's the big ace in the hole there, isn't it? But I think ufologists, with deep respect to them, don't understand what they're talking about when it comes to religion, and they certainly don't understand how human institutions work. You know, and also, you know, churches are built around people's spiritual experiences, which tend to be either moral or psychological. And they're built around what that means as a community responding to one of the great teachers and what that great teacher had to say in a particular context. They're not built around mysteries. They're not built around phenomena. Certainly those things come into a well-structured church, but they're not, I don't think, unless you're of the type that you think it shouldn't be mentioned at all. And again, I'm suspicious of that. Yeah, any mystery, any unusual phenomena is bound to come up sometimes, and it's bound to be discussed. I mean, what people mean behind closed doors is you know, when professionals get together. Right. Well, when I'm ever at a clergy social, whenever I'm at a clergy do, you know, invariably it's all about costs, diminishing congregations. Why won't the bastards turn up? My word, don't worry, not this. You know, what are they doing wrong? And they're running out of money, and there's no money to put on. I mean, there was one terrible one I heard one year was the Salvation Army. Terribly narrow people theologically, but rather good. They've got good hearts. They were running out of money to do the soup run. In London, there's something called the soup run, where they send out trucks in the middle of the night to give derelicts, drug takers, the homeless, a bowl of soup and some bread because they won't get it anywhere else. And they were running out of money for that particular ministry. And I thought, well, that really shows the human condition for what it is, because you bastards, you go there on a Sunday, you won't put your hands into your pockets to keep something incredibly valuable going. You just go there to feel good about yourselves, and then you come home, and right, they can get on with it, which doesn't strike me as the Christian message at all. So, do things happen behind closed doors? Yes. Professionals meeting, they tend to talk about things to do with their profession, the ups, the downs, the rights and wrongs, who needs support, who doesn't need support. It's like, it's what people think professional meetings are like. Clergy socials, get-togethers, in my experience, are very much the same. And I don't know if Unity has that, Stuart. I mean, I mean, remember, I'm a liberal Catholic by definition. I mean, they probably prefer liberal Catholics not to turn up, but I can't think of a single time theology's ever been discussed. Because it's all to do with the nuts and bolts of how churches run. Right, that wall's crumbling. There's no one to make tea at fellowship afterwards. How do you recruit people to make tea? All right, a story you were telling me off air, we won't go into. A major social event has happened, a political event, and then someone storms off because well, how dare you? I mean, one of the best examples of that, I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time, one of the best examples of that was, I used to visit spiritualist churches sometimes, a movement I'm very interested in, and it was where there was this young firebrand in a spiritualist church in London. I mean, all she was doing was raising money and getting things up and running. She had to go. I mean, the whole place was coming together. They were earning money. Congregations were building. There was a buzz of energy around the place. So they basically wouldn't renew her contract. And for various reasons, trumped up reasons from what I heard. And that's not a go at Trump. That's a British expression.
Yes.
That's not true. And I heard about the final confrontation between the two different parties. She came out of a clergy meeting. She came out of a PCC, a parochial church council meeting, shouting at them, "This place is dead from the neck up." To which one of the old ladies on the committee shouted back, "And that's just the way we like it."
No.
So that's church life. I wish it was all skullduggery. Wouldn't that make it more interesting? I mean, it's incredibly boring. Do these things happen? Well, I suppose if you're in the middle of no man's land, somewhere in Texas, maybe. But, in the rest of the world, no, I'm sorry, I don't see that. If they come up, it tends to be, in my experience, in a very positive light. Remember, I'm on the liberal end of the tradition, and it's all to do with bigger perspectives in life. It's all to do with there's more, in heaven and earth that's dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio. And as I say, any minister that does really think it's pure evil manifesting itself should hang their head in shame if they're not discussing that. I mean, right, let's have one more example, then I'll shut up. I mean, Wilhelm Reich fascinates me. The generation of psychologists, psychiatrists after Freud and Marx, two giants of humanity. These people were giants in their own right too, which is why they all fell out. I mean, Wilhelm Reich, an absolutely rivetingly fascinating individual. I mean, he had UFO encounters. He claims to have had a fight with a UFO. They are battling them as agents not only of deception, but I mean, these energies, these vehicles, were here polluting the energy flow streams of the earth. They were here polluting it for their own nefarious ends. And when he set up the ranch for his followers, I can't remember what part of America offhand, forgive me. In other words, his particular community where they could live Reichian principles, and he could prove to all the rest of us that led to mental health more than Freud. I mean, certainly more than one person claims they were buzzed by UFOs on more than one occasion. And Reich with his cloudbuster battling the UFO until the light the light flickers and it goes out. So he got rid of the UFO. And he thinks they're poisoning the what does he call it? Not odd. He calls it not prana. What is his?
Organoid or
Organ.
something like that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Stuart. Yeah,
Mhm.
the organ energy, the life force, the deep power that keeps the mechanism, the organism going. He thought they were here, as I say, for their own ends, polluting that. I think there are lots of ways to talk about aliens and disclosure that people actually don't realise are discussions about alien disclosure. Now, if a psychiatrist is going to talk about those things and say they are negative, by the way, Jung, of course, was also interested in UFOs, wrote a book about these things, and didn't think it was all negative. So, it's these things. My trouble with the UFO community, which is probably why they hate me, is that it's this insular conversation, us against them, us against them. We've got a secret. They don't know it. They hate us because we got a secret. But is that really the case? I mean, people disagree. But that's, or is it the Department of War? We've got a secret. They don't have it. We've got a secret. We've got to protect it. They hate us because of it. But it strikes me as a human way of thinking, but it's a childish way of thinking. It's what people do in a gang in a schoolyard. It's not scientific inquiry. It's not philosophical debate. If you think something extraordinary is happening, raise it and look at the resources. Raise it and what are people saying about the issue? I mean, in Jung's case, he thought a whole new myth, a very complex word, was forming in front of our eyes. I mean, a new constellation of psychic forces, maybe a new archetype was forming, and it
Yeah.
was mirroring the what the new age in front of us. I didn't mean that in the sense of new age, the future. It was mirroring what was happening in front of us, and that it was taking a cosmic form and a quasi technological form. I thought that was fascinating. I think UFO people, ufologists, the UFO community has to be a bit more ballsy. It has to be a bit more robust. Do people disagree with us? Whatever. Do people think some of us are crackpots? Some of us are crackpots. Do people think? Do some people think it's all balderdash? Yes, but maybe what I think, I think they're talking balderdash. Grow up time. Grow up time. There was oh God, one of my favourite books by Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End.
Yeah.
Childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think.
The alien was an intelligent gas, as far as I remember. It was a gas from somewhere else that thought all of us were incredibly primitive. Therefore, didn't really want to talk to us. So, Yabu sucks, you chimpanzees. And I seem to remember that the human beings only managed to make contact with it through music. It would respond to the harmonies of music, and then we started talking to it, and it basically thought, well, you're not all bad, something about it. So that was the end of childhood. We'd taken a step towards this more cosmic society. Right, let's throw some more stuff in. I mean, the spiritualist Swedenborg was convinced in his visions he'd talking to beings from other worlds, men from other planets. Oh God, he's mad. He thinks they all come from Venus. Did he mean physical Venus? In spiritualism, there are other densities, as the New Age people say. There are other levels. I doubt very much he was referring to the mass of rock and chemicals we mean. He meant the step above, because they were above us. They were ahead of us. Or Alice Bailey with the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy that kick-started this world of chimpanzees. I mean, basically, we were going in circles and rubbing our asses with leaves, and that was it. And so the hierarchy leaves Venus. People aren't reading the stories properly. It's an alien hierarchy of highly evolved individuals' personalities that thought that's not good enough. It's not fair on the earth. And they're more worried about the solar system. They're already working on the level of solar system harmony, for cosmic harmony. It must happen, otherwise they begin to get it in the neck. So they come here and start making sure the energy flow fields are working properly. The orgone, the prana, is all that working properly? Let's tinker with it. The human race, it's time for them to just stop wiping their asses with leaves. There's a spark of God in them. Are they getting close to that? Let's help them get closer to that. I remember somebody saying to me once, or if there are these hidden masters of wisdom, they've made a balls up of history. To which I replied, sorry, it wasn't me, somebody else in the room replied, Maybe they are there, and what would history have been like without them? Because
Mm.
there's another way of looking at that. I mean, so no, I don't think I don't think disclosures, this cataclysmic event that, Trump suddenly walks up to an alien spacecraft and pokes it. I mean, what would that mean? Even if that happens and that's true, what would that mean? It wouldn't mean as much as people think it means. And my own first reaction, as a believer and someone who's seen something that looked like a silvery disc, my own reaction would be, is that real, or is it the Department of War playing tricks?
Yeah.
So is that really what people want, and would it do what they think it does? Or are these conversations, the whole ufology thing, much more a part of social and cultural discourse than maybe the UFO community's admitted to itself? Don't know what you guys think of that. Shut up, David.
All right, so to
I think Mike
okay,
hates that. I think Mike hates that.
I think I hit what?
The fact that if you get a machine like a hot rod, an alien hot rod, that somehow changes the human psyche. Um, to be honest, I wish it did. I wish bloody something would change the human psyche to make it.
I think that it would. It would definitely change my
think it's a
psyche if
lie.
I had an alien hot rod.
Yeah, I think it's a lie. I think your alien hot rod's a lie. There we are. That's the end of that.
All right, well, good talking to you.
Do you see what I mean? I mean, there's bound to be somebody somewhere that instantly goes against that. And then already you've got confusion. You've got the confusion of who is it? What have they done? Is it real? Were they tricked? Because I don't think the nuts. I mean, I'm not saying the nuts and bolts in the investigation of the nuts and bolts and that end of the phenomena isn't vital. I've never ever said that. What I'm saying is that must take place in a much wider context, in a much bigger frame of reference, or you end up, maybe you're holding, an engine from a UFO, a proof of higher intelligence is at work. But let's think of the reality in human society as we know it now about how that would be received. And I think we're all far too optimistic, sadly, about the implications that would contain.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to toss out there was sort of two things. The first one is the Age of Disclosure documentary, as said by my normie friend. Wow, this made it more legitimate. It's more serious now because of these people who, whether you know who they are or not. Like I do believe, no offense to anyone, but a lot of Americans don't know a lot of those people because they were sort of in the background or whatnot. But the point was they were all high level government or military officials and such. So for like on a, what do you call it, a massive scale or whatever, it's good because it gives legitimacy to the conversation and opens it up. The other part is, I personally believe that it has to do with a shift in the global consciousness, just the fact that we're even talking about it and having these conversations. Like, so let's just fast forward. What does it all mean? Like, at the end of the day, what it means is there is another biological entity that is more intelligent than we are somewhere out there. And that's how everything just sort of changes. But I don't think a lot of people are even thinking that far down because they're all caught up in the circus and the cycle of, is it real? Is it not? Oh my God, look what they said, bombshell this, bombshell that, whatever. Let's talk let's talk about what this really means and why should we even care?
You see, the last comment is the comment that sort of leads in my direction. Why should anyone care? And that's why the global shift, that a biological entity from somewhere else proving its reality wouldn't cut the mustard. It wouldn't provoke that. It wouldn't energize that. Why should I care? Hey, Trump has just met this thing with a big head and bulgy eyes, and I've still got 5 jobs to work. Big deal. Oh, good for him. Now I've got to go to this terrible job. I'm cleaning up the dirt in somebody's street. I mean, we got to get a realistic grasp of all this. in terms of biological entities that are more bright than us, isn't that dolphins? I mean, they've got a much bigger brain capacity than human beings. They can communicate over vast distances. They seem to be able to hold at least the rudiments of philosophical debate. Someone was telling me that the other day. So maybe it's them. I mean, they've adapted to their environment much better than we have to ours. So why are we looking further afield? Will people respect life on the Earth more if they discover alien beings? No, they'd be trying to exploit it more. I mean, there are two movies came to mind. Oh God, I'm in a movie mood. It's because it's Christmas. Um, Came to mind as you were saying those things. The first one was The Life of Brian. That might shock you both. Monty Python having a go at the Christmas story, but did it? Because I think that's a very misunderstood movie. You get the three wise men at the very beginning turning up to the wrong household.
Yes.
That woman who's not the Virgin Mary and her brat who eventually becomes Brian. And she says, "All right, so you're astrologers, are you?" And they say, "Yes." And she says, "Okay, what is he? What star sign is he?" And one of them says, "Capricorn." And they eventually realise they've got the wrong house and the wrong woman. So she's pushed in the face out the way. And they run down the road and you see the Holy Family. There's Joseph, there's Mary and the Divine Child. There are halos around them. So it wasn't denied. The gag was they got the wrong group. What happens? I mean, Jesus, our good Lord, is depicted very, very clearly twice in that movie. The Sermon on the Mount is my favourite bit because you have the classic archetypal Jesus, blessed are the poor and giving the gospel. And because the Pythons are comedians, you get right to the back of the crowd where, of course, people can't hear what he said because it's so far away. And someone says, "What did he say?" And someone else replies, "He said, blessed are the cheesemakers." And
That's
then
right.
someone else says, "Well, why are they so special?" So again, it's bringing it. What the secret of Python humor is to bring it into reality and the human condition, right? The little bit I'm getting to is that UFOs turn up in the movie.
They do
At one
too.
point, yeah, they're chasing Brian down the road, and Brian accidentally falls off a Jewish tower into an intergalactic ship, and this thing is zooming out of the atmosphere. But what no one on the Earth realizes is we're actually in the middle of an intergalactic war.
Yeah.
And a battle cruiser shoots the thing down, and you see it shoot to the Earth and crash. And Brian gets out. God knows what happened to the pilot. And somebody says to him, "You lucky bastard." In other words, he's had the proof we all want, but it doesn't really matter, and we can't comprehend it. It's nothing to do with our history. That's to do with their history. So that came to mind. How about that for a disclosure event? And no one was any the wiser.
Wow.
Or sort of this I don't know, this sort of Avatar nonsense, that movie with all the blue Jamaicans. I mean, so are we part and parcel of something, or aren't we? Um, Biological entities. Would it make a massive difference to the vast majority of the human race that a physical grey was proved to be true? The answer must be surely on a logical level, yes and no. Isn't that interesting? Someone will make the movie, loads of books will be written, the Department of War will start drawing up sinister plans. I mean, that is what would happen unless they were already in cahoots with it. I don't go for those stories personally. I mean, right, so, right. I mean, remember there was UFO hunters. I mentioned this story on the show before, I think, which I thought was incredibly telling. The UFO hunters turn up to somebody's yacht, some plutocrat's yacht, who wished he hadn't seen the UFO. I think that's incredibly telling because all of a sudden he knows the world is a bigger place than just finance and keeping working class people under control. And he doesn't want to know the world's a bigger place, and he doesn't want to know there's more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in his philosophy. That will be more of a reaction than people realise, I think. Would it be interesting? Of course it would. Would it be a change of human consciousness? That's me being the cynic. I doubt it very, very much. At this moment in time, I don't even know what would initiate a change of consciousness, because people seem so focused on ephemera, on fantasy. I'm sick of social media, because what was once a system of communication for us all is now inundated with fantasies. Um, and right, yeah, you are so clever to have made that little bit of footage, whatever. Yeah, great, great. No, you won't be given a Hollywood deal. Great, you know. That you no longer know what's true and what's not true, and I think the same would be of the so-called biological entities disclosure, and even if it does a sort of world tour, waving at people on chat shows.
Yes.
But is it real? That would be the big question. And if it's real, well, I'm sorry. You know, uh, great aunt, what's her name, is on an iron lung in the hospital. Can I keep the payments up? I don't know. I mean, that really is what people are like. You need something beyond our condition, not something part of our condition, to start a change of consciousness. And that's really where the world religions kick in.
What do you mean by beyond our condition?
Any biological entity, by definition, is part of a sensorium, part of a philosophical material condition that we share with that entity. It's part of a known range of existential conditions. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to communicate with it. There might be aliens around us now, but they're not part of our continuum, in the sense that they don't share the reference points, eyes, the five senses, the type of mentation we've got, the fact that we use the human condition as a measuring rod. We can only really understand things if it's brought into the human condition in a comprehensible way. There may be loads of things out there that will never occur. Yeah, it will never occur because we can't. We are what we are. We are the beings that we are. It strikes me, and as I say, this is getting cynical in my dotage. It strikes me that something outside all of that could somehow make itself comprehensible to us, say there is something above, beyond everything that you know, that would start changing consciousness. And it would take something of that level. And then people would be rowing for the rest of history about what it meant, or was it real? The UFO people have got the same argument the great religions do. Did it happen? Was it real? Does that mean ufology's some sort of ersatz religion? No, it doesn't. It means it's an interesting cultural phenomena. I mean, some people have made it into a religion, truly. But it strikes me you're back at square one. So, right, you've still got the same questions now, and you've still got the same responses. So I can't really see what it's done. It would take something like a savior. It would take something like a prophet. It would take something who has touched something other, a different dimension, something utterly not to do with us, and say all of that is there, and you were embraced by that somehow. Chuck Missler. For him, of course, and for me, it would be the advent of Jesus Christ. People don't get how mind-blowing the Christmas story is, because it's been domesticated, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I like cutesy and cuddly at this time of year as well. This is the winter festival. There's always been a winter festival. Because days are shorter, it's colder in the northern hemisphere. In the past, there wasn't as much food. People huddled together in communities to look after each other. There are more sicknesses around because bugs come out when there's less light and less warmth. Yada yada yada. So there's always been a winter festival. It's part of the earth, the life of the earth. It's part of our sensorium. It's part of what human beings do and the earth does. So, we now call it Christmas. It was called other things in the past. It'll probably be called other things in the future. But it's what we do, and it's part of what we are. But the odd bit about the Christmas story is that something from somewhere else touched our condition. And then everybody's arguing. What was it? What did it do? I don't believe it. Yes, I do believe it. What does it mean? Um, it's not just, you have the very humanist hope that every single child that's born promises that the world could be a different place. So you've got that hope, and I think that's utterly beautiful. But in the Christian version of the story, you've got something genuinely bizarre, that a consciousness, that an energy that had absolutely nothing to do with our continuum, at least touches a group of people. And the repercussions of that go on forever. Your response to that is part of that adapted consciousness. Whether you reject it, you're now part of that story, whether you like it or not. Whether you embrace it, do you understand the story to go any further with it? Do you understand the ideas behind it? Most Christians don't. So, you're dealing with that very idea in a mythic symbolic form. So that would be, I don't know, is that an art? I mean, I'm droning on too much.
That was absolutely beautiful. I tell you what I was thinking while you were saying that. So essentially, like, disclosure has happened 2,000 years ago, approximately, where some entity or some being has come from outside our reality, tried to explain to us that there's a whole reality that we came from. This is very similar to what people are talking about, UFO disclosure, and also the results of that, where people arguing about what did he even say. Blessed are the cheesemakers. I know it's making fun of the situation, but it's got a lot of reality in it. Did he even come? Was he even a historical being? Was there even really an ET? It's all the same questions, isn't it?
Look, I mean, when is disclosure? Now. It's this show. Disclosure is now. It's this show. It's us having this conversation. This is disclosure. Was disclosure 2,000 years ago? Yes, and it will be tomorrow as well. It will
Right.
be Christmas Day. It will be New Year's Day. Disclosure is now. The minute we begin to realize the world is a bigger place than we think it is. And no short grey, I'd love a short grey guy to walk into the room now. And I've got a billion questions for it. But, would that affect anybody else? One of my favourite movies is The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original version with Michael Rene. As much as I love Keanu Reeves, you dropped the ball with that. Sorry, darling. Like, my God, why is the remake never as good as the original? But I mean, truly, you couldn't do something as good as the original. The silvery disc lands on the White House lawn, and you get the alien, the noble alien who gets out of the spacecraft. So what happens? The Department of War shoots him down.
Yes.
And then you get this robot who is actually the numinous presence. He represents this otherness who steps out of the saucer, realizes what's going on, and reduces the Department of War to next to nothing. But it takes the alien to calm him down. I mean, so that was your classic UFO encounter, but more than that, because they realized that in itself would not be enough. It's a very clever movie. So everybody's arguing from the word go. I mean, right, so Clarty the alien's in hospital because they've shot him down. And he realizes he's not going to get through to them, because there's another side to this. I mean, it's not just all about us having disclosure. What do the aliens think? Are we worth it? Will they get through? And, that's a much bigger question. And certainly Clarty the alien thinks he isn't getting through. He's not getting past the media. He's not getting past the Department of War. He's not getting past people's general reactions. What goes on and what doesn't go on. That movie needs to be remembered because it's a lesson to all of us about human reactions to something that would be more than us.
Yeah.
I'll leave that. Yeah. So disclosures now. It's every minute, because the minute it happens, we become slightly different people.
I would agree with that 100%. So if we can I gotta ask, the Christmas questions too, because it's a good way to end it off too. So, what is your take or thoughts on? I'm sure you've heard them before too, but there's people who theorize that the Christmas Star of Bethlehem, whatnot, was actually a UFO, and Jesus himself was a hybrid alien. What do you think? What do you have to say about? Have you heard that? And then what are your comments about that?
I actually visited the Aetherius Society at one point. They strike me as really, really nice people. Yeah, so is it Aetherius? You two more? I can't remember. It was so many years.
I'm not sure.
Sir George, somebody who founded that community, says he met the aliens on a UFO, and that became a sort of quasi-religion. Where they're visiting the Aetherius Society morning, noon, and night, and they're telling us all these cosmic secrets. The only thing I liked in that group, I mean, they're lovely people, so don't get me wrong. I didn't dislike them as people. I just thought what they were saying was, you're back to square one again. They've got a prayer machine, which I loved. You have to queue up. And you do that. Right, this is the theatrical part of David. You queue up and you make this incredibly theatrical gesture. You put your hand on the prayer machine. Oh, I'm now sending out my love and compassion to all the beings of the earth. And they always lapse into this weird.
That's right.
And this energy form will include everybody in my will. And my God, what's all that about? But it was great. Whatever they were doing, whatever they thought they were doing, it was great.
Yeah.
And the Raelians, I mean, that was that French journalist.
Yes.
Yeah. They wanted to have conversations. They contacted us many times, and I was just like, no.
You coward, me, right? Well, no, come on, it's a bit. Everyone must be allowed their say, and at the very least, it's a bit of fun. I mean, why is it always a bloody journalist that's at the top of things? I'm sorry. So I have a reaction from the word go. Why did you have to contact a journalist? They're not above us. It's not this super class that dominates everybody. So a grey alien gets out of its hot rod. I mean, I've seen the pictures that go with it. So there's this little gangplank, and the grey gets out and gives everyone a wave. And of course, he sets up this community. Is it in France? I can't remember. And I remember seeing part of an interview with him at one point where he's wearing the Star of David, this big pure gold. I'll say nothing else. Right, pure gold Star of David and all this fur, and he's looking like some Space 1999. One of the cast of one of my favourite sci-fi shows. Looking like one of the cast. And he says, some of the interviewer, he's in an interview situation, and the interviewer says to him, "Why are you wearing a sci-fi costume?" And he says, "I was told by the aliens to dress like this." And for God's sake, the big secret of disclosure there is we've all got to wear costumes like Space 1999, and then everything happens, so we all go around in this sort of sci-fi in our cosplay, and then they all turn up because they like the way we're dressed. And but I've got my suspicions of that community. It's just one huge hippie loving, if you ask me. I've heard aliens, right? So they take the oath of apostasy, right? All these ministers that think it's evil, you're looking in the wrong direction. That's interesting. Why would aliens want everyone to take an oath of apostasy against the major religions? That's very interesting. Why would that even be on their range? Why would that be on their list of things to do? That's interesting. But when they're not doing that, it's this huge orgy, from what I've heard. So that's the secret of the aliens, is it? You're all there for the rumpo. Right, So I mean, So yes, I'm aware. He said that there are theories that our good Lord was an alien. I mean, the trouble with different dates for these things is that basically Christmas, it's not entirely based on the old pagan winter festival. It is partly, but it's also based on the Jewish Hanukkah. That was meant to be the Christian version of Hanukkah, because the church fathers, in many ways, were trying to mirror the Jewish cycle of the year, because they were trying to follow the teachings of the prophets that led to our good Lord Jesus, and so on and so on. You know what our good Lord Jesus taught, and so on and so on. So that goes on. So when someone talks about a cosmic event, and I mean, on one level, the birth date is arbitrary. You know, did it happen on the 25th of December? I doubt it. Is that really the issue? Not really. You know, that's when our society celebrates. So that's when our society celebrates. You know, what people have tried to do is put the birth to fit in with a cosmic event. So, like a conjunction or like a comet. So it can't have happened then. It must have happened then because the three wise men are following the star. I mean, I remember hearing years back that it was either a conjunction of Venus and what was it, Jupiter? Or maybe it might have been a super conjunction between Venus, Jupiter, and a star system somewhere, which would have been a bright light in the sky for a number of years, actually. Um, you know, so what people are trying to do in their attempts to vindicate the story is moving the time of the birth around. But again, the time of the birth on one level is neither here nor there, nor is fitting in with the cosmic event, neither here or there. You know, certainly because it hides deeper issues. I mean, people got so offended at this at one point that the story went missing from the Bible. That's indoctrination, and that's disgusting. You know, the Gnostic books were part of an ongoing discussion about what should be included in the corpus and what should be excluded from the corpus. Remember, there are different versions of the Bible with different amounts of books. The Catholic Bible is larger than the Evangelical Bible. And there are real discussions around that, and they're serious and they're interesting. The Ethiopian Bible is bigger than both of them. You know, they're very important discussions, and to me, I think they're ongoing. I don't think the canon is closed, not really. Um, you know, so when you're actually removing stuff, that's different. And the fact that three pagan priests were the first people to discover the divine child gave the Victorians lots of problems. So it wasn't the Jews, it wasn't the faithful, it was three pagans. Oh my God, what did that mean? Is God inclusive? Surely not. You know, so that gave them huge trouble. I mean, Magi, of course, is what you would call a Zoroastrian priest. They're the priests of Zoroaster. They follow the light principle. There's a bit of Gnosticism there. They didn't like that. And of course, if you read the Bible carefully, the Babylonians are the big enemy, not the Persians. The Persians come and rescue the children of Israel from Babylon. So what they didn't want to do was attack the Persians. Zoroastrianism was the religion of Persia at one point. So they didn't want to attack them. So the whole thing became an embarrassment. So let's take it out the Bible. You know, I mean, that's disgusting. The Magi, part of what a Zoroastrian priest would do is astrology, as we would know it nowadays. And it was part of their religion to search for signs of heaven. That was a Freudian slip. Search the signs of heaven, because they were very big into maintaining cosmic order and structure. They had a sort of natural theology. You learn about religion, you learn about what's beyond the human race, the earth, by studying what's beyond the earth, the stars. So their shapes, you know, how, I mean, really it should be called astronomy. What they were doing was astronomy. Did they feel symbolic messages could be taken from that? Yes, but that's not really what they were looking for. They were actually studying the cosmos in a very modern way. You know, he wanted to know what the constellations were, how it all fitted together. What does that mean for us on Earth, if that means anything? So certainly the fact that people like that were the first people to pay homage to the divine child, that raises lots of very interesting issues. But as I say, the answer to that is various groups, various scholars have felt, right, what that meant is because that event happened in the skies, so it must be back then somewhere. It's interesting. I mean, Velikovsky had a different edition, Worlds in Collision, that it showed the degradation of the solar system, you know, the orbits and the system as itself wasn't fixed. Now, there's a dangerous thought. And I've noticed lots of astronomers recently, and I mean astronomers, have said, well, he had a point. That's bloody interesting, a worrying thought, that they've gone into sort of a balance for a while, but there's nothing actually maintaining the balance. There's not enough gravitational exertion from the sun and yada, yada, yada. So Velikovsky thought what the ancients were observing was some sort of weird imbalance amongst the planets, scary stuff. And that, of course, makes it a cosmic event that would have caught interest. But yeah, let's get to the nitty gritty, this hybrid malarkey.
Well, yeah, if I can just chime in here real quick about that too, because it's there's the theory sort of goes, and it makes sense to me as a UFO investigator, right, who talks with contactees as well. There are a good number of female humans around the world who have had what they call alien abductions, and have soon after that become pregnant without having any other things happen. And then that also typically leads to, at some point, a couple months later, they are suddenly not pregnant, which is some pretty weird stuff. But, to take that into consideration with the idea that Jesus's mother apparently didn't do what, you normally do, and her mother also did, so you have two females of the same bloodline who were impregnated without the traditional means, which is where this theory potentially comes from. So with that,
right, I'm gay. Somebody's got to tell me what the normal method is. Oh, there are wars and rumors of wars. There are signs and wonders. There are things called phantom pregnancies. They happen more often than people think. Biologically, it does look like somebody's pregnant. I don't doubt there are physical abductions. I mean, there was that book by Mack, like the big psychologist, that struck me as rather conclusive. Something is going on. I've no doubt people are abducted. I know, whatever that means, I've no doubt they've had abduction experiences. As I've said before on this show, what happens strikes me as more like a ritual than any medical procedure. Something goes on and somebody comes back. I mean, the X-Files are my favourite when it comes to this sort of thing. In their heyday, not what they've turned into, this old couple talking shite. You probably got a peeper over that, can't you?
Are they still on the? They went off the air a long time ago, didn't they?
Oh, did they? I saw it recently. They've aged. They're both in their bath chairs and talking about aliens. But give it a rest. It just struck me that it was really clever in the old days. One of my favourite ones was with the writer, an agent. So everybody's testimony conflicts with everybody else's. You've got the writer who suggested, his agent actually, that Stuart and I will know what that means. You've got this external power suggesting something, and you've got to go along with it because it's a good idea. Right, so the manager, right, can't you do this? Right, so the manager suggests something. And you see the writer at various points with this notebook, and he's writing everything down, and everybody's testimony conflicts with everybody else's. There's no clear narrative at all. And it begins with a very clever opening. So you get the UFO scenario, the floating disc turning up and the short grey turning up. But then you get a triangle turning up with red light, and you have a beam of light, and some entity called Lord Kimboot, this sort of monstery thing, turns up, and he's clawing at the grey. And it turns out one of the sub-narratives is that Lord Kimboot, who lives in the inner earth, is actually the real alien presence, and the other guy's just a government pilot who's been taught how to drive a UFO, to man a UFO, pilot a UFO. And you see the grey with the cigarette in its mouth, a disgusting habit, but you see the grey with the cigarette in its mouth saying, "This can't be happening, this can't be happening, this can't be happening." So you've got another level where absolutely everything is incomprehensible, because that really is life. We all get together and put our heads together about something beyond what we know. Is it going to become this new understanding? No, we're all going to collapse to this weight of information, and nobody knows what the hell has gone on. But it's interesting. So I tend to be of that ilk. Would an alien hybrid Jesus solve anything? The trouble is, no. Are we meant to follow the man, or are we meant to follow the message? The importance of the man is the message, not weird magical powers. I don't think that's blasphemous. Not occult powers, not mystical powers. It's interesting if they occurred. They are not necessary for faith. The faith is meant to be a guide to your inner reality. It is not meant to be an alternate set of physics, if you even need an alternate set of physics. I quite like that Lyle Watson supernature thing. There's an extra level to nature as we understand it, but it's still nature as we know, as we comprehend, rather. Jesus himself, our good Lord, is moaning all the way through the scriptures that nobody's doing what he's saying. In fact, I quote, "If I am thy Lord, why don't thou do what I say?" Unquote. So, as usual, everybody's doing their own thing and nobody's doing what he's asked them to. What does he ask them to do? The Sermon on the Mount. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind, and love each other. And that's the big problem, isn't it? We're willing to do next to anything than try and love each other as human beings. And that's where So for Jesus himself, it seems to be the Gospels. Are you following the message, or are you following a guy? Okay, he's an alien human hybrid. Are you following the message? It wouldn't solve anything, right? So for me, that's just another way of saying that something incredibly unusual happened, right? The whole Virgin Mary thing, I'm liberal Catholic, so technically you don't need the virgin birth to have a Messiah, right? And there were huge arguments about that in the early days of Christianity, huge arguments, which I don't think have been settled. Personally, I do believe in the virgin birth, and not because I'm simply required to. Never believe something because you're required to, but because there's a sort of growing mysticism in those archetypes, and it fits in with religious history on a global level, which would take a whole show to explain. I'm fishing for a different show to explain that. So I don't know, bloodlines and it's all interesting stuff, but all you're really talking about in a different way is an infusion of the other into the human historical stream. So it's back to what we can all agree on. If we think there's validity to the Christmas story, something of rather singular importance happened way back when human beings were caught up in it, and it's had repercussions ever since. I don't think MUFON is doing anything wrong in documenting the nuts and bolts and these stories. I think, if anything, it's a brave organization doing what must be done, and no one else is doing it. Certainly the arrogant sciences at the moment are not doing anything like that. They're trying to reduce everything at the moment philosophically into this sort of atheistic secularism. Sorry, can you justify that as a philosophical move? Do we know that's the ultimate point of reference? The answer is we can't know that. We will never know that. We don't know as human beings what the ultimate point of reference is. We can't. Because again, it would be to step outside the human condition, which we cannot do. And the minute you've done that, you end up with answers that can't be brought back into the human condition unless you're something that deals with things both ways. But that seems to be the trend in the natural sciences at the minute. This sort of naturalistic, this biological secularism. I'm sorry, I have lots of dealings with the academy on a personal level. That's your belief system, and that is nothing more than that, and you can't justify any more than that. And I will meet anybody in a referee journal whenever they want, because that is a philosophical opinion and nothing more. Is it useful in some ways? Yes, but so is the transcendentalist opinion. That's useful at times too, because what they do is they describe the world in a very accurate way, but they leave out too much from the description. So it's accurate but not accurate. There is so much in the world of a qualitative level that simply can't be added into the description, that it's no longer a description of life and reality, human reality as we recognize it. So no, you haven't done that. It's what they call the genetic fallacy. Can a human being, and Dawkins is the worst. Though Richard is a British scholar trying to get to the truth, a big-hearted humanist, so I've no argument with him. Wouldn't it be nice if there were more big-hearted humanists? But reducing the human organism to the interaction of genes isn't describing the human condition. The end. How does that describe the Sistine Chapel? How does that describe the music of Mozart? How does that describe somebody falling in love with somebody else? It doesn't, and it can't. So my trouble with that is it leads nowhere. And that really is what we've got to be careful of as people are interested in this phenomena. Are we making it more realistic that if I sit down and think about the universe, it shouldn't exist and it makes no sense? Hey, but that's real. What I'm talking about is what no quantum physicist would disagree with. If you sit down and think about it, why is any of this here? It shouldn't be. And, quantum entanglement. Well, that's bollocks. Oh my God, it's true. The trouble is, it's true. So this sort of, let's make this more believable, let's make this more comprehensible, might be the wrong way of doing things. Ufology, by definition, is trying to rise us. It's trying to bring us up to a bigger vision of reality. It's not trying to reduce itself into our understanding of reality, which is people that work too many jobs, Trump as president, Keir Starmer ballsing up England. That's what the UFO phenomena, by definition, is trying to do, is going against all of that. So the fact it makes more sense if we do that actually doesn't make sense as an answer. Also, these disclosures that make more sense, hasn't that been done time and time again? I mean, Stephen Greer used to do that at the drop of a hat. You get all these very qualified and credentialed people turning up. They give their testimony and they're willing to say it to Congress, and still nobody listened. Doesn't that add more credibility? Well, I wish it did. It clearly doesn't. I mean, when I was watching Stephen Greer's footage about a year and a half ago, about the original disclosure panel he got together, these were people that had to be taken seriously, and they were worthy of a good hearing. And what's the reaction? The press ignores it. And other people, he went mad for a few minutes then. I mean, that tends to be the reaction. The worst one, the worst of all reactions. That was interesting. Let's go to the bar. That's, if we think the UFO phenomena is containable within the human, we've already lost disclosure. If we think by definition, all the bright lights, all the small greys, all the magic circles, all the abductions, all the phantom pregnancies, things floating about, if we think by definition that does not fit into the normal, we're already asking the wrong questions if we're trying to do that. What does it mean to be in a greater scheme of reference where these things actually really happen? That's what we've got to do as a UFO community. And MUFON, in my humble opinion, is paving the way for that. I don't find anything it does of the slightest irrelevancy. It's documenting people's experiences. It's provoking psychiatrists to answer what lots and lots of people have been through. It's validating Jung's attitude that new forces are taking shape around us. And it's trying to weigh, and it's trying to measure, and it's trying to make sense of something. MUFON deep. I'm very fond of MUFON. Not every investigation group, for different reasons, but what it's trying to do is make sense of what cannot be made sense, and that is admirable and completely laudable on every level.
Wow, well, thank you for that. That's
Mike Reese, you are a trailblazer and you don't even know it, my friend. But anyone that takes up that type of position in MUFON is looking like the old Pilgrim Fathers, is looking like the fathers of the church for an answer. That is a religious position, and you are asking religious questions. I remember speaking to a Unitarian, does it ever come up in my sermons? Yes. Giving a sermon to a Unitarian, I'm very fond of Unitarians, to a Unitarian congregation in Southend many, many years ago. And I said, let's all go outside the church now and look into the night sky and look at the immense distances, the cold, inhuman distances, even between the planets, let alone the stars, where most people think there's nothing. Vast, intergalactic, inhuman realities. And then I said to them after that, by the way, you've just asked your first religious question.
Right.
Right. So MUFON is upholding that sermon of mine. And it's upholding anyone that's got an open mind and a feeling heart. You need both to make sense of this subject. And it's a subject I've never denied it was of paramount importance. All I've ever said was we've got to get a grip of what this subject means in real terms. I've never denied that it's right. It's like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What a good place to end this or round off this. You know, if you stand back from that movie, what a gorgeous movie when we all thought Richard Dreyfuss could still act. You know, what a great movie that, you know, the aliens turn up with something that to me looked like a giant oil refinery. You know, and they're buzzing people and they're interacting with people finally. And all this telepathy and telekinesis is happening and all this music. And, you know, the aliens, you got the impression they were trying to do something. They were trying to reach out to us, not the other way round. And then you got the impression once that was clear in the mind, when you'd seen the movie, you'd had the popcorn, you know, you were chatting about it afterwards, that, right, they were reaching out to us, not the other way around. So what could religion be, bearing in mind the earlier scene of the Hindu holy man and the people in India pointing upwards? Maybe religion is, and I'm not saying it's only that, but maybe it's the first stepping stone for human lives into the cosmos. It's provoking us to think in bigger terms so that we one day can take our own place with our brothers and sisters, whatever they are, amongst the stars.
Wow. Great spot to end it there, but I have to throw out a disclaimer that this is independent production here, and we're talking amongst ourselves. Although I do work with MUFON, we're not saying, you know, MUFON doesn't get religious or anything like that. So just want to make that clear to anyone out there listening. But man, wow, that was a great, wow, awesome.
I try my best. You know, I mean, you know, this is a time of celebration. It's a time of reflection. Don't think it's only a time for families. Remember the family row. It's just around the corner. You know, I mean, it's a time of magic. It's a time, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, you know, when the nights are long and tempers are short and people drink too much, which is all part of it. But remember, there's something special behind it all. The great rotation of that being known as the Earth herself in that much bigger system, which goes around the sun. You know, by the very fact the nights are short and we drink more because it's freezing, bigger issues are being raised. And the fact that on the edge of all of this, there's ufology, I personally find fascinating. As usual, gentlemen, it's a singular pleasure working with you both. If anyone listens to this that's got ideas about us putting on a conference, I am still thinking about it. We need support and we need help. That doesn't just necessarily mean money. It does mean money, but it doesn't just necessarily mean money. Because I think this project, is one of the most exciting ufology projects I've come across on YouTube. is asking real questions of real people and from a number of perspectives. That's exciting. And, if we could actually manifest, let me get New Age, if we could actually manifest this into a physical happening where we can all meet together like an extended family,
That'd be sweet.
swap notes face to face, my God, what will happen then? Invite a few Greys to turn up like Stephen Greer does at the Joshua Tree. They come
We'll call them in. We'll see
we
E5
call
it.
them in. We call them in. That is such a weird thing. So he goes to this place and then stuff happens. Yeah. So anyway, we'll call them to our conference. Let's give that a New Year thought to anybody watching this program and send special thoughts out to Mike and Stuart. They don't always feel appreciated. Do not cut this bit from my. They don't always feel appreciated. I'm not sure why, because I, for one, appreciate them a great deal. Because this is a unique show. And what they're doing, they're approaching a highly complex phenomena. At the very least, everyone can agree this is a phenomena, a cultural phenomena. If you believe none of it, you have to agree it's a cultural phenomena because it's occurring, and it's occurring within our culture. So if you believe none of it, okay, there we are. There's still a point of reference we can all talk from, we can all debate from. They work very hard at this. They don't always get the appreciation they deserve, and that's both of them, because they're a winning team. And let's try and get more discussions going. I get the impression with loads of other podcasts, they don't really want a discussion. They want to teach you what you don't know and where you've gone wrong. And for a small fee, you can buy my book and get my wisdom. That doesn't happen on this show, because we're the real deal. And those two are doing the real thing. This is an exciting project, and send me your blessings and your love for 2026, because this is a time, if ever there was, when we need to ask bigger questions about what it means to be human and where we're all going as a species. Now I have said my piece. There we are.
Well, thank you, Reverend David.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful.
Was.
Could I ask you to leave us, Reverend David, with a Christmas blessing or a Christmas prayer?
Oh, gosh. Thank you. I can only think of prayers about the existential at this time of year. For me, curiously, this is a time of year where theology becomes secondary, because there'll be people facing Christmas with nowhere to live. There'll be people who are coming up to a very bad Christmas, wife beatings, family rows, and I'm not saying it's not magical. I'm saying we've got to be aware that's part and parcel of the holiday. And some people want to reduce it to just a sort of financial exchange. So, the attacks upon Christmas are manifest nowadays, which is a shame because it's a time of hope. So, a blessing maybe. My friends, if you find this meaningful, may the light of greater worlds and the love of deep mysteries be in your personal heart and in the hearts of those around you. As this year draws to an end, during this Christmas season, and in every single week of the year ahead, be blessed, be happy, be warm in your humanity, and don't be afraid to take risks and look for a better life, because that is the whole point. Amen.